Hi, welcome to pblchat. So this is a weekly video podcast for teachers who are considering starting project-based learning in their classrooms. So I'm your host, Steve Yale. I teach in Central Texas at a public high school called Belton New Tech, and I've been teaching for 8 years. I was a physics teacher, and I've been in a PBL school for the past 3 years? 3 years, yes, 3 years. So my guests tonight, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Are all teachers with me at New Tech, and they have varying backgrounds and varying levels of experience with PBL. And we figured the best way to have our opening topic would be quite simply, what is project-based learning? So whether it's project-based learning or problem-based learning, what is PBL? So that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to let them go ahead and go around and introduce themselves. And how about we start with Missy?
Okay. Hi. Well, I'm Missy Tilotchka, and I also teach at Belton New Tech with Stephen. And this is my 13th year to teach, and I have been at Belton New Tech, which is a project-based learning campus this will be our 3rd year in operation. And I'm not talking about PBL yet, right? Just intros.
Just intros.
Okay, and I'm a math teacher, so that's me.
Cool. All right, Robert.
Okay, I am Robert Pryor. This is my first year to teach anywhere, and I am teaching at Belton New Tech, and I am a digital media teacher.
And finally,
my name is Charles Rodarte, and I'm kind of 1 year behind Stephen. I've got 7 years teaching, but 2 years doing project-based learning at New Tech.
Cool. Okay, so for those of you listening, this is our first podcast, so you'll have to bear with us on our technical difficulties. I'm sure they'll pop up. Hopefully we'll be quick and mildly entertaining. We'll see. So to start us off, so our format is going to be kind of, you guys are just going to have a discussion, and I'll kind of ask you some questions every once in a while. So I'm sure listeners have noticed that we are all at a New Tech school, which is a brand and all that kind of stuff. Our goal is really to kind of help teachers regardless of what school they are. So when you guys start using jargon that might be kind of central to a specific company or ideology or book or whatever, I might ask some clarifying questions from that. Okay? So just to start off, so what is PBL? That's our question for tonight. And when I say that, I don't mean what are the practical things you do in the classroom necessarily, but really what is PBL? When you get down to it, if you strip everything away at its essence, what makes something PBL, maybe in comparison to more traditional teaching. So what is PBL? Whoever wants to start, feel free to lob something out there. Not all at once.
Okay, I'll jump. Okay, I'll jump in. So immediately I think of my kitchen right now. So we are refinishing all our cabinets in our kitchen, and so that's a project. And so you're starting with a problem or something that you're trying to accomplish, and there's nobody there holding your hand telling you exactly what to do. So you need to go out and find the solutions to your problem. So what do? You start researching, you start looking into the best ways of doing it, what have other people done, what techniques are the best techniques to use, and you kind of work backwards. You start with the problem, and you being self-motivated, trying to solve your problem or to accomplish your task, find the information you need. And so you're kind of in a project-based learning situation, you're doing the same thing. It's just that the students are doing it instead of you.
Cool.
Yeah, I like how you used your kitchen as an example, and I can't really, I have to quote somebody. It's Jeff Kroll, and he's sort of the guru of the math end of PBL, and they sort of coined a little spin-off from PBL, and it's problem-based learning for math, which seems to work really well. Not saying better, but a lot of people are finding a lot of good luck with that. And I love how he puts it. It's sort of giving the kids a problem to solve, and they may not have all the tools that they need. So it's sort of like throwing them into a pool to swim, and they maybe have never swam before, or maybe they've swum a little bit, but not in a pool like this. And so you kind of let them flounder around in it for a while, and as they get desperate or starting to need things, you sort of throw out maybe a life vest, or you throw out maybe a noodle, or you throw out a little tidbit to help them survive. You don't want them to drown, but you want to give them enough to keep them going and sort of let them sort of discover ways that they can survive in the water and kind of find a solution. I like how he puts it.
Yeah, I like that too. So I think we lost Robert for a second. I'm sure he'll be back. Well, Missy, what can you tell us about? So you mentioned problem-based learning. So ideology, like the ideology of it. Can't say that word tonight. Would you say what is the difference? Like not necessarily like how you implement it, maybe, but from a theoretical standpoint, like what is the difference between problem-based learning and project-based learning?
Probably the magnitude or the size. Typically, and it doesn't really have to be this way, but typically people think of projects as being more long-term and with maybe a really big end product in mind, like maybe the whole renovation of your kitchen or, something bigger. Whereas problem-based in math, math and even I think Spanish is like this. There's a lot of steps, little smaller chunks of material the kids have to learn in order to get to the next step, a lot of scaffolding. And so problem-based would be exactly like project-based, except for smaller problems that maybe target more specific learning standards that you want them to achieve. And maybe the whole cycle is just like project-based learning, but only maybe on a 1 to 2 or 3 day cycle, however it longs for them to solve that smaller problem. So once they solve that smaller problem, it could be a part of a bigger project, but you kind of get quicker feedback so that you can fix what they miss in math before they try to start something else.
So instead of doing the whole kitchen, you might start with the cabinets.
Yeah.
Or even rearranging the dishes or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if you hate for them to fail on the whole kitchen, you'd rather monitor all their little pieces. Good kitchen analogy.
Cool. Okay. Robert, what do you think to the new guy? New to teaching and new to PBL, what do you think so far? You got 3 weeks under your belt.
It's pressure.
And there he goes. So he answered my question loud and clear.
Easier question.
Hopefully he'll be at work tomorrow. Okay, well, let me ask you this then. So you guys kind of talked about, I think you started to get into it. So why do PBL? So what does it get you that maybe, what's the point? So why do that?
For me, anyways, I think it's kind of having an immediate purpose for learning. So it's if you tell a student that don't worry, you'll need this later in life, trust me. That's a little bit more difficult to accept than I actually have something right now that I need this for, and I can use it immediately. So I've heard of other what's it called? I think it's called the Sudbury School, which is way more left than we are as far as education goes, where they just allow students to explore whatever they want to explore. Whether if they love video games, they just explore video games all day, every day, until they start to really get deep into it and they realize, oh, okay, I might need a little bit of programming, and then they go after that. So it's kind of like that, but more goal directed, where they see a point to it because the point is coming very soon, and it might be a little bit arbitrary, but it's better than just saying you need to know this for the test.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and I think that so much of what we do teach, like Charles with chemistry or me with algebra, geometry. I mean, there is a lot of the stuff that we do teach that most people won't really use those specific things in the real world. So I'll give you a great example of why PBL. I'm starting a cooking club on our campus, and we're completely unorganized. And so I sat around with about 25 kids on our very first meeting, and I was overwhelmed. I wanted to quit. I really didn't know where to start or how to start. And it was my students who have been in the PBL environment that stepped up, and they used a lot of the things that we do in the classroom to organize it. They were like, well, let's start with what we know and what we need to know, and let's organize and get into committees. And they started collaborating. So it was beautiful for me to see, because not so much the math that they're using in the real world or seeing that authentic, and thing that they would need. It's the skills that they acquire in the PBL environment, the ability to collaborate, the ability to sort of organize and task orient and just be able to function in a real world setting where they have to solve some problem.
Yeah, Charles, I think we saw that a little bit today in robotics. We had our first official robotics meeting too, and we kind of lumped them up and gave them some things to do, and it was interesting to see people that have been in the PBL environment for a couple of years. We had some juniors there, and they just naturally got up and started leading discussions. It was pretty cool. I liked it.
Yeah, so it's about a process. The kids are self-initiated. They're not looking to you to say, okay, what next? They look to themselves and start pushing the process in the way they want to go.
That's cool. Okay, so no, go ahead.
Well, it also enables them to sort of be brave and try things, because so much of our stuff, we're such a yes population. Like the kids, instead of us saying, this is what you have to make, that they can come to us in that environment and sort of be free to say, well, can I do this? Should I try this? And it's usually, yes, you should. Is it okay if you fail? Yeah, it's great to fail because you learn from failure. So I love to see the kids take that and apply it. It's just beautiful to see.
That's cool. Okay, so far you guys have kind of told me how your analogies for PBL, if you explain it to somebody, and then kind of some why you believe in it. So now my question is, so if you're a new teacher and you might not be at a school that does PBL and you might just be thinking about doing it for your classroom, so what are the things that you think every single good project should have? And they don't necessarily have to be like specific activities or anything like that, but like what do you need to start with? And then what do you kind of go to then? And then what does it kind of maybe end with? Just what are the big basic things that you really need to have in order for it to be a good project? And maybe if you were going to break it down into 3 or 4 things, not a lot of things at all. And you can bounce things off each other for a minute. I don't know, whatever you want to do.
Well, go ahead. We planned the project together, so we can kind of think through that.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So we were doing crystals, and I think everybody immediately kind of can say, okay, there's something intriguing about crystals right off the bat. They might not be able to identify what it is that's intriguing about them. They don't know if they never really thought about it. They don't know if it's because they're beautiful and transparent, light passes through them. They don't know if it's because they have certain symmetries that, humans just tend to identify with. They just know that there's something about crystals that are cool. And so I think a project has to have something that the student identifies with immediately that's not artificial. And so to use a little bit of jargon, it might often be kind of a driving question. So why are crystals so dang cool, right? I mean, it's something that probably everybody, they probably haven't thought about it, but once the question's asked, they're like, yeah, why are they? And so it's going to kind of drive them forward to kind of answer that question.
Yeah, and we don't want to limit it either, because I know when we were designing this project, you want to lead them towards that end product that you want. And not so much a tangible product, but the learning outcome that you want to target, right? We want learning to occur, otherwise we're wasting time in school. But I felt like you want to try to keep it open and give the students freedom to express themselves within that project or product. So not only why are crystals so dang cool, I think allow the students to have their own twist on that, or we called it a +1 persuasion. Are you interested in the healing qualities of crystals, or growing, the lab chemical part of them, or blood diamonds? What's so cool about those? But in the end, the students are all learning about the chemical and geometrical properties of crystals, but we gave them freedom to research what aspects of crystals that they thought were so dang cool. Freedom.
Cool. Robert might have an answer to his question now.
I agree with everything y'all said.
Typical person.
Yeah, my internet decided to go out right when y'all were starting to talk.
I don't think he's there. But the funny thing is, we took a little bit of risk with the crystal thing, where that's kind of a leap to say kids will think crystals are cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an automatic thing. But I don't think I had one student say, crystals are stupid. Why are we doing this? I hate you. So, I mean, it was kind of universal, and I think it's kind of nice when you can tap into those things, and I think they're everywhere. You just have to find them. Is Robert there?
So
can you hear me?
Yeah. So Robert, the question they're trying to answer now is, so if you were going to talk to somebody who might be thinking about PBL, what would you say the foundational basic things that every good project has to have are? So, and not necessarily like specific activities, but more characteristics. So they talked about, Charles kind of started off by talking about like a driving question type thing, which really he then led into. Charles, if you're going to sum up what you said in one word that a project has to have, what would you say it is?
It's some element of self-motivation, I guess.
Okay, so something that gives them some self-motivation. They're interested in it. So, and he said like a concrete, something that matters to them. And then Missy then started talking about that there's some freedom involved too from the students. She referred to what she called plus ones, which I like that. So even though they were all revolving around the same content, they were able to. Hey, there's an 8th grader. They were able to add their own. And then I kind of like too what she just said about the risk. That I think there has to be a little bit of risk involved, on everybody's part, teachers and students. So what do you think, Rob? What would you add?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yep.
Okay. I liked what Charles said. I think there needs to be, it has to be authentic in some way to where it matters to them. A good example with what we're doing.
Can you guys hear him?
Can you not hear me, Charles?
Oh, I can.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can.
Everybody but Charles can hear me. Sorry. The podcasting, we're having them podcast where they really wasn't that interested in it until they interviewed some people that they were interested in. And when it mattered to them, they really got into it. So I definitely think when you're doing some type of project, if it has some type of real world meaning to it, or at least relevance to them.
That's good. I like that. It's true.
For me, the hard part too is like reeling yourself into. So, just on our last planning day, it's so easy to sort of generate fun ideas. But I think one real important part of designing a unit or a project, whatever you're designing, we call it a problem-based unit or a project, would be to you have to keep asking yourself, what's the learning objective? What's your target? Because when you're coming up with real world things and you start getting excited, this is going to be fun and the kids could do this, you have to keep asking yourself, what are they going to learn from it? Are they going to acquire the skills or hit the target that you want them to hit? I mean, we want them to have fun and have freedom to express themselves and have an authentic motivation. But if you don't keep that learning target in mind, so it's always back to the drawing board, redesign it if you don't think the students are going to hit that learning objective.
Right.
Well, so along those lines, if you're a teacher thinking about doing maybe your first project, something like that, so how do you make sure that they do kind of hit the target you might want them to hit, right? So, it's project-based learning. So the actual project at the end, like how much of that do you tell them what they're going to do versus let them figure out? Because that might be the $1 million question. You might, what's been successful so far in figuring that out for you guys?
Well, I'm still trying to figure it out. So I would like to hear from y'all that have been doing it longer than me.
I can share how I failed and how I'm fixing that. My first year to do this, my biggest failure was I had some good ideas, but I wasn't very good at benchmarking or sort of having really solid checkpoints. And I don't mean just walking around checking to see if kids are on task, like actually checking and giving feedback to the students, because now I'm learning that those checkpoints they're just vital to the learning. And that's where you redirect kids. That's actually where the teaching and those teachable moments happen. So really, if you do enough checkpoints along the way, you've already graded the student's end product. When they finally turn in that end product, you've seen it so many times. It should be a perfect project or near perfect for what you were targeting. Otherwise, you've let them fail. So I'm not saying I do that well. I'm saying I've learned that that's important.
That's cool.
If I talk over the top of Robert, I apologize. I can't hear him. So, but I'd say for me, one thing that has played a big role is if I allow the students to kind of do the project any way they choose, they're a little bit gun shy. They really don't know what to do with that, and it's not very effective. One of the projects I'm most proud of is where I was over nuclear chemistry, and I gave the students a tic-tac-toe board with the choice of 9 different projects all at once. And they had to connect 3 in a row and decide what was important to them. So there was like a medical track, there was kind of a weapons track, there was an energy track, and things like that. And so they could kind of pick out what was interesting to them and present it in these well-defined ways, but there was a large variety of choices that they could choose. And I thought it was incredibly successful. For one, it was successful to me because I didn't have to listen to the same presentation 35 billion times a day. There were a huge variety of presentations, and so I survived the day pretty nicely.
So let me ask you a question about that, Charles. So on your board, so you said they picked 3 in a row, tic-tac-toe kind of style.
Yep.
So as someone who you guys watched my 8th grader walk by, a little bit ago. So there's teachers throughout our district and throughout other schools that do projects, and what seems to be one of the differences to me is when they assign a project, they're telling the kids kind of what they're going to do at the end. So go into what you had on your tic-tac-toe board. So you said it was like a medical track and then this and that. So were you telling them kind of what they're producing or the topics that they're investigating and the directions they're going?
So for that one, I actually every topic had a different presentation style.
Mm-hmm.
So it was still kind of broad, but they could use a 3D modeling program for one of them. They could have used iMovie for another one of them. They were specific to the different projects, but I think the reason it was successful was it was just the right degree of freedom and just the right degree of clear expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes they seem to flounder in absolute freedom.
Yeah. Especially so, and you teach sophomores, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I got a question.
And what was cool is they all hit the same learning objectives, but they were kind of hitting it all from different angles. Am I talking over Robert?
Yeah, I think he's trying to ask you a question. You might have him muted. You might want to check, see if you got the little red button up there in the top right.
Yeah, Charles. I think Charles muted me. He didn't want to hear me. So yeah, because you can mute
feedback for me.
What?
Somebody else.
He said you think you have him muted because he made you mad today in Think Tank. Click on his picture and see if you have him muted. I don't know. But we'll summarize what he says. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, actually, what Missy was saying, I have a question because we've been taught, or I've been taught, when you're doing project-based learning, you're kind of always going.
Now you just muted him.
Yeah.
I just now muted him?
Yes, you did. For everybody. Good job.
Oh.
So come work at Belton New Tech, and we will not listen to you for your first year.
Yeah.
He's still muted. That's funny.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're good.
Okay, Charles still can't hear me. All right, so y'all have to tell Charles what I said.
Okay.
I was asking about where project-based learning.
Well, Charles, we'll tell you when Robert's done, and then we'll tell you what he said. I told you there'd be technical difficulties. It's our first one.
The end project is your goal, right?
Right.
But like what Missy was saying is there's so much along the way that by the time you get to the end, you should be there. And kind of like life, it's the journey, not the destination. So do we put too much on the very end project and not all of what goes in between? I don't know. Just a thought. When you said that, it made me think of that.
That's a good question.
That might be why, and I really I sort of came in to where, we're under the new tech umbrella, which is the name. But that might be why some of the project-based learning environments decided to sort of recreate what project-based learning is like for math, because I feel like from what I hear, I wasn't involved for a long time, that the students weren't gaining all of the knowledge and, all of the bragging things that were going on in all the other disciplines in math like they should be. So they decided they had to recreate maybe what math should look like. And so for math, it really is all about the journey. Because if you set a student free on a journey that's 3 weeks long and you're teaching them about linear functions, and you don't really explore or hop along on the journey with them and their end product fails, then, that's one of the basic foundations, linear functions in Algebra 1. So maybe that's why they scaled it down, or people are trying to recreate how that looks. Maybe the journey is what project-based learning is in math, and we're still trying to figure it out,
So Charles, Robert, can you hear Robert yet?
No.
Okay, so he brought up, so he kind of piggybacked off Missy and mentioned that, just like life, that a lot of it might be more about the journey than the destination. And sometimes we might put too much emphasis on the end products, as opposed to the journey itself. And then Missy talks about in math well, you heard Missy, right?
Okay, so, immediately I kind of think of kind of the same situation that I might be in, that my students are in, where too much freedom kind of can be, I can't think of the word, but paralyzing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't really know where to go.
Right. So in a way, it's kind of nice to have those objectives at the end, but I'm just trying to make good of a situation that I'm not super happy with. I actually think that it is more about the journey than the destination, and that specific objectives shouldn't matter. It's about the process. It's about problem solving, and that regardless of whatever the content is, if you teach people to learn, that the content is kind of, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah. I heard one of our teachers on campus say, make a really good point. You're talking about sometimes too much freedom, Charles, is paralyzing. But I think sometimes people have this misconception about project-based learning, in that we just sort of give some sort of enticing sort of carrot for the kids, and then we set them free to come up and just discover everything for themselves. And it is still our job to facilitate our kids, and there are times we still do stand up and just lecture or teach or help them. In fact, because some kids can't just generate ideas, one of our teachers today was talking about how all throughout the day when he was kicking off a new project, for those students who weren't really sure where to go, they created sort of a collective Google Doc all day of next step ideas. And so that sort of gave students a jumping board. You didn't have to use any of those ideas, but by the end of 7 periods of teaching, there might have been 32 ideas on there that for that student who is like, what do I do? Where do I start? That sort of gave them some ideas to generate from.
Cool.
That's a good idea.
So far, sorry, Charles, go ahead.
I was just going to say, though, they might get the product that they need to get for the assignment by having those ideas and that framework. But I also think that if they really kind of hit their head against the wall for a long time, a real problem that they couldn't solve and they had no real good examples of, and they had to kind of come up with their own unique response, that they could come up with something really innovative. So, it's just like in the real world, whether it's Edison trying to create a light bulb or whatever, that sometimes that deep learning is self-motivated, kind of unguided, but then also it's not something that can be artificially created either. So,
yeah, a lot of it might depend on the specific content within a class, right? So you might wind up teaching one thing, Charles, like you're doing your element dating game, right? Your next project, like that might wind up being something that just naturally they can kind of take the ball and run with. But then you might get into, like Vesper or something like that. So, some other chemistry topic that's going to be much more abstract that they might need more guidance along the way and stuff like that with the project. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So far you guys have talked about the importance of like getting them at the beginning and giving them a real authentic kind of something to chew on and something to guide them along the way. That students have to have some freedom throughout the project. Both students and teachers take some risks, that the journey itself is more important than the destination. So I guess we're hitting our 30-minute mark, so we want to wrap this up. But the last thing then is, so where does that final product fit in? So it is about the journey rather than destination. So what do you do with the final product? What benefit do you get from it? What do you have kids do with it? What do you recommend for new teachers? How's that fit into the equation?
Well, I'll jump in quick. There has to be, you have to do something with it because, and I don't always, but the project we just teamed up with Charles and I for chemistry and geometry, even if it's something kind of unauthentic, I mean, we had a crystal expo, and our purpose was for them to share their knowledge of crystals and why crystals were so dang cool. Is to answer that question to the general public. Charles had a genius idea. His literacy piece was for students to email parents and community members to come to it. And I just feel like having an audience of some sort, like somewhere where their product or problem solution is shared, I feel like that's valuable. They see more purpose in it if they're going to share it to some extent.
I think this question is really, really difficult. So the great projects or the great products, it's kind of obvious what you do. You kind of celebrate them. If there's an audience, you pull people over there and say, "Hey, look at this! Can you believe it? Look at the size of the crystals these guys grew." And it's kind of obvious what you do with that. I might put it up on my wall and keep it around for a few years and be really proud of it. The hard part for me is what do you do with that final product that kind of missed the mark?
Yeah.
You give them the grade, and they're not really motivated by grades. They probably look at it and go, "Yeah, that's about what I expected," and they move on and they don't think twice about it. But I don't know. It's like right now I've got a room full of stuff that is going to go in the dumpster. I'm not saying it's all terrible, but it wasn't enough for the students to come back and pick it up. And you always, that's the kind of the dark side of projects, is those products that are not really there. They don't really meet the mark. They totally missed it completely. They have no idea what was going on. Or those, sometimes there's those projects that superficially, they look really good on the outside. The students knew kind of what to do to make it flashy and nice, really nice bubble letters purchased from the store and things like that. But they really had no clue what was going on. And those products, I haven't quite wrapped my head around exactly what to do with those. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that it needs to be addressed. I know we probably need to go back, and the students really need to understand how they missed the mark. And we try to avoid that in this project by kind of giving them some feedback before the product was due. But time moves on, and we have lots of stuff to cover, and so it kind of just goes by the wayside. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around what to do with those final products.
Well, so
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh. So, like Stephen, when you talk about the final product, that might be different for each student, though. Mm-hmm. Like I remember the chair project that you did last year that I think Charles, y'all are trying to do now. I remember some students were very proud of their chair, and they wanted to take it home and show everybody. Yep. Others made a chair. They made a chair out of cardboard, and that was the goal. And others just wanted to throw theirs away immediately. So maybe that just means different to different students,
Yeah.
And students know, even because so I'm partially responsible for a lot of that stuff left in your room too. Sorry, but I'll come by tomorrow. But even students who maybe outwardly appeared that they, and I hate to use the word fail, but maybe missed a mark, but I still think there was a lot learned from that. And again, it comes back down to that product really isn't the measure that we're looking for always. Content-wise, yeah, we want them to get content, but sometimes students secretly or even expressed to us that they weren't very proud, or they sort of realized in that process that their product isn't like everybody else's. And that's a big lesson in life too. So that's, again, back to the whole project problem-based learning. That's probably the most valuable lesson we give to students, is learning to budget their time better, learning to collaborate and to task orient things better. I just feel like even if they fail, they still gain. You hope something from it. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of students gain something from that experience.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I appreciate Charles's honesty, because this is the one thing that this is a very common experience, I think, with PBL teachers. Is there's lots of stuff that is just like, there's good things about it, and then there's bad things about it, and you have very mixed emotions about the outcome, kind of thing, right? So my question for Charles would be, so because I taught chemistry in a regular school, and chemistry is tough to get kids engaged. So my question would be, in doing this project, would you say that they were more engaged in chemistry and maybe have a fonder feeling for chemistry and a better takeaway from this project than they would have if you would have done something comparable that maybe might have been a little faster, and you might have been a little more sure of the content that they've got? Do you think they...
Yeah.
For sure, because they could put their hands on it.
Right.
So, chemistry is a big black box, and all this stuff happens. You can't see it, trust me. And so, I mean, for sure that happened. But, it's just in the back of your mind, you're going to question like that group that presented a molecule as opposed to a crystal structure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they totally did not even understand the concept at all. And do they now? I mean, I don't know. And so, I mean, to that student, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But at the same time, so you mentioned that they're not always very motivated by grades, right? So in a traditional class, you would have kids that would bomb the final test for the unit. And so they fail that way too. And I wonder if standing up and presenting a molecule and looking around and realizing, oops, like ours is a little different than everybody else's. Like they might actually learn more from that failure and that mistake than they would on another test. And I also kind of come back to, I have kind of a philosophy that if you make them appreciate the content more, as opposed to teach them more of the content, and with today's learner, I think they're better off in the long run, because if kids leave you with a high opinion of chemistry, they can teach themselves chemistry. There's resources out there, more so than just if you cram it into their heads and they forget it next year. So, sorry, Missy, I cut you off.
Well, no, like Charles, this is cool because, I mean, we both know that there's so much that we could fix on this project, and we had conversations about the content piece, right? And so, but think about this. I mean, I spent 11 years in a traditional classroom, and I taught geometry. And never did I sit in a geometry classroom where my sophomores were coaching my freshmen who were in biology about VSEPR and linear bonding between electrons and the trigonal bipyramidal VSEPR. I mean, I've never sat in a geometry classroom where that conversation came up, and I can almost imagine that in a chemistry classroom, people weren't really talking about the different polyhedron shapes and maybe how coincident lines and planes related to that. So that's big. I don't know how big that is, but that's cool.
Well, and absolutely, you make a good point that it's a conversation and it's out in the open. And that student that missed the mark, I didn't like pick up their product and show it to the rest of the class and ridicule them and say, "Can you believe these people?" But at the same time, they probably felt a little bit like that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing that they realize there's different, and because the open dialogues and they realized that they're missing something, even if they didn't totally get it, maybe they got some kind of motivation or realized they could do better without being, I don't know. It's not a one-on-one conversation with the teacher and the student.
Great. All right, so we're hitting 40 minutes here, and it's a school night. So I think we're going to wrap it up. So from my takeaways from this, so it sounds like you kind of ended with the final product does matter a little bit, but it might not matter in the ways that you normally expect it to, right? So maybe the sum of the parts of the final product, whether it's the failures and the successes, might add up to more than just what's on the poster board or whatever it might be. So before we say goodnight, you guys have any parting thoughts or parting words?
Well, I'd say it's
think that this was really
for me.
cool. I'm sorry.
Like you talked about.
Talking.
I'm talking over Robert. Oh wait.
No, I was just going to say that I think this is cool, and I'm glad you put this together, Stephen. And I've been having internet problems, and Charles can't hear me, so I'm sure that it would get better when we figure out these technical difficulties.
I hope so.
But I think it's cool to have conversations about this.
Yeah, I think it's good. Thanks.
It's fun.
Okay, I'm done, Charles.
He's done, Charles.
I'm done.
Okay, I was just going to say, kind of like you heard the term soft diplomacy, maybe kind of like soft learning, where there is like small, subtle connections being made, learning opportunities that aren't maybe necessarily about the content, kind of life skills about how you present yourself and mistakes you make and learning from the mistakes and things like that. I think with project-based learning, there's a lot more opportunities for those kinds of things. And they don't translate to a test score, but I think they give life skills that are not easy to see immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. All right, so that's it. All right, so thanks you guys. I appreciate it. For those of you that just watched this,
Have a good night.
There might be 2 or 3 people out there that actually watch this video.
Okay,
go ahead, Robert.
and where can we find more information, Steve?
So you can go to pblchat.com. That's where this video will be posted, and also on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. At our handle is pblchats with an S on the end. So pblchats. So thanks, guys. If anyone's interested in getting in touch with us for whatever reason, have questions, or you'd like to be on the show, the people on the show will always be different. Hopefully, even I won't be on it all the time for y'all's sake. But so anyone that's interested, whether you're a student, teacher, parent, whatever, let us know, and you can come on the show and have your say. So thanks. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Okay.
Adios.
Adios.
Bye.